What's going on, guys? Castillo right here, and guess what I have in front of me right now? One of these boxes is your A7C. We're gonna be unboxing it right now. We're gonna be kind of like unveiling the contents of this, in my opinion, incredible camera with mixed opinions by the industry. So let's get started. It could either be this one or this one. I'm actually expecting the Sigma 85mm f1.4, hopefully it's here, and the other one is the camera. So, this is the moment of truth, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna be unboxing your A7C. Boom, there you go. Let's actually open also the Sigma 85mm f1.4. Hopefully it's the Sigma. Yep, it is right here. I went through hell for this lens. I'll tell you in another video. But anyway, so probably I'm gonna pop the lens since we have it on the A7C. And we're gonna close the knife right here. So let's see what we have right here and let's explore the contents of this camera. Now, the version that I have in front of me is the all black one, and I also order the silver and black. So I don't know if I'm gonna be giving away this one to you or the other one. Now, this is what you should expect if you get the combo with the lens. So as you can see, the lens is right here. Let's actually unpack this lens because I actually watched a couple of YouTube videos, and as you guys have seen, I had this camera for a whole day and I was able to shoot a lot of photos. And even though this is a super weird focal length, which is 20 to 60 millimeters, and the aperture is a variable aperture, 4 to 5.6, this lens produces super sharp images, and I'm actually gonna do a video specifically talking about this lens. So we're gonna have the little strap. I don't know how many of you guys actually wear this strap. I never wear them. I like the Peak designs. We have a provided charger right here for the camera, and we have an MPFZ100 batteries. These ones are the one with high capacity. Now, on my test of the Sony A7C, if you missed it, I mean, this battery actually took me a long way in the Sony A7C. I think that probably is one of the cameras with the most energy efficiency when using this battery. And last but not least, ooh, wow. So imagine, guys, this could actually be your camera right now, and you're seeing it right here. And in order to enter in the free giveaway of this camera right here, the Sony A7C, all you have to do is subscribe to this channel, enable notifications, and go follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Gaston Shutters. I'll be announcing the winner on Christmas. So good luck to you guys, and let's start talking about this camera for a moment. Let's actually pop the lens really quick. Anyway, so we're gonna be talking about this camera, you know, what this camera actually has to offer. And like I mentioned before, there has been a lot of mixed reviews about this camera. There are people that love the camera. There are people that kind of don't like the camera so much. Now, one of the problems that I think we're having with this camera is that people are comparing this camera with the Sony A7 III. And in my opinion, this camera is more comparable to an A6600 than with the Sony A7 III, and I'll tell you why. So the first thing that I wanna do is I wanna mention the things that are unique in this camera and you're not gonna find in the Sony A7 III. Number one, this camera is not gonna have any recording time, so you're gonna be able to record until the battery runs out or either you fill up your card. Now, the camera also has USB-C, so you're gonna be able to power the camera via USB-C while you're recording. Therefore, the only constraint right there is gonna be your card capacity. I find that really nice, especially if you're gonna be filming interviews with this camera or YouTube videos that take multiple takes. So the next thing that we're gonna see in this camera is going to be gyro data being recorded every time you shoot a movie. Now, gyro data, what it's gonna do is basically gonna track the camera's axis in the space. Therefore, when you bring this footage to Catalyst Browse, the camera's gonna use those coordinates from the gyro data to stabilize your footage. Now, the word stabilizer in Premiere a lot of the times misjudges what you're trying to accomplish, and I find that when I'm trying to stabilize panning shots, you know, followed by some jerkiness, the Premiere warp stabilizer may actually give me weird artifacts, where the gyro data would actually tell Catalyst Browse exactly how the camera was moving in space. Now, the next thing that we're gonna find here that is actually a really nice accomplishment is the dedicated movie record button at the top. And to me, a lot of the times, it's all about the small details because now you can find the button, you can see it if you're filming yourself like I'm doing right now, without having to go in the back of the camera and trying to figure things out. Of course, you always can use the app, but you know, a lot of the times, you know, you're just going solo with the camera and you wanna find that button. Now this camera is one of the 3 cameras with flip out screen. Now the first one was the ZV-1, the little pocket camera. Also the Sony A7C has a flip out screen with touchscreen capabilities. And this one is gonna be kind of like the one from the ZV-1. We still have the older menus. We'll talk about more in this video. Now the next implementation that Sony has been rolling out in all the new cameras is that they have rearranged the dials right here. So now you have the manual function in stills, followed by the mover record and the S&Q right next to the other one. Now I have my Sony A7R III right here, and I wanna show you how Sony did it before. So you have the manual function right there, and then you have to press this button, go all the way around to switch in movie mode and then S&Q. And as you can see right now, they are one next to the other. So that's pretty good. Now the next feature that is really important for me is that this camera has real-time tracking in video, something that I don't have right now in the Sony A7 III. And a lot of the times, when I'm actually raising my hands or coming close to the lens, I go out of focus. Even though right now I have a box at about here tracking my face, a lot of the times I'm pretty animated and the camera is gonna try to focus on my hand, for example, rather than focusing on my face. Now, real-time tracking is gonna lock on in your eye, and it doesn't matter if you're doing this, it's gonna try to keep the plane of focus right by your eye, unless you obviously, cover your face with the camera. Now, right off the bat, both cameras, the A7 III and the A7C, are gonna use the same sensor, 24 megapixels. And I think this is one of the reasons why people try to compare this camera with the Sony A7 III, just because they share the same sensor. Now, right off the bat, this camera is gonna feature the brand new flip out screen. Now, we don't have actually touchscreen capabilities like the Sony A7S III. Now, this screen right here is gonna make our life a lot easier, especially, when coming with those super low angle shots or those super high angle shots. And in my opinion, that was something really needed and due for Sony. Now, when it comes to the interface of the camera, we're gonna see compromises. And remember, this is the camera that was designed with compactness in mind. So with that, there are gonna be compromises for sure, and one of the things that you're gonna see right off the bat is the limited amount of custom buttons. Now, the reason why I say that this camera looks more like a Sony a6600 than an A7 III is because, number one, the shape form factor of this camera is very, very similar, as you can see. We also have the same layout on the back of the camera, almost identical as the Sony a6600. Like for example, right here on the a6600, we would have 2 custom buttons, but right now we have a movie record button, a dedicated one. And they could have added another button right here. I think that would have been really much appreciated. Now, one of the things that you're gonna miss about this camera very much is going to be the dial right here. We don't have, in my opinion, I use it for the aperture. We don't have that front dial right here to control the aperture. Now, if you're gonna be getting this camera as your only camera, well, the first thing that you're gonna have to commit is to make those sacrifices, not having a lot of custom buttons. Now, myself, for video or photography, I don't tend to use a lot of custom buttons, to be honest with you. I got pretty used to, setting all the things that I want in the function menu and access them there. Now, we have an exposure compensation here, and if you actually compare it to the Sony a6600, in this location, we have actually the aperture dial. And I hope that Sony can allow us to customize this exposure compensation to act as an aperture dial, and that will be really, really good. Now, the reason why probably this is not gonna happen is because it tops off. You go from -3 to +3. So, you don't have that infinite scrolling, but probably they can allow us to get at least, 22 stops by doing this, and that will be really, really nice. Now, right on the back, you're gonna have somewhat of customizations. And when people say that you have no customization, remember, you can always customize the 4 points of the scrolling wheel here in the back. The up, the down, the left, and the right, they can actually be customized to a function. So keep that in mind, because if you have crucial functions that you need to access, you can still configure them, with these 3-4 points. Now, in my opinion, I've been shooting with the a6600 a lot. I'm actually used to shooting with limited functionality on the dials and buttons. And it's gonna be just a matter, of adapting to this if this is what you wanna get as your main camera. Now, we also have a hot shoe mount right here. So, we're gonna still be able to use remote triggers and the whole 9 yards. And yes, the overall aspect of this camera is very clean, minimalistic, and very portable. Now, I know that the difference in weight is not that much, it's about 150 grams, but to be honest with you, it does feel a lot lighter, in my opinion, than the Sony a7 III, which is the camera that is filming me right now. All right, so we have a brand new battery. Let's actually turn on this camera and we're gonna be prompted with a welcome screen. You know, you enter your location right there. I'm just gonna go, boom, set it right there. I'll do that later. Now, one of the things that you're gonna notice, like I mentioned before, that is actually, in my opinion, a waste of an opportunity is making this camera touchscreen. And when we were here talking to the Sony rep, you know, they told us that the reason why they couldn't do that is because the camera doesn't have the processing power as the Sony A7C in order to handle the touchscreen capabilities. Although, you know, we do have touch to focus capabilities, it's only limited to that. And, you know, at least we have a rotating screen. Now, in my opinion, you know, I'm not trying to convince you, but once you get used to the the pretty awkward menus of Sony, it's kind of like, you know, intuitive in my opinion. I'm actually so used to, because all the cameras that I have Sony have that menu. I've been using them for over 6 years. But the brand new menu is actually good, but sometimes I find it a little bit slower because you have to dig into to menus and dig and dig and dig. And sometimes I feel that the horizontal rate of the standard menu is actually a little bit more functional than the new one. But that's going to be a personal taste right there. Now, you're gonna notice that once you open the lens, you know, the lens right there is in its closed position. The camera asks you to actually rotate in order to activate the lens. So if you wanna expedite the process of turning off your camera and turning it back on, you can actually leave the lens, you know, already turned on, not locked in this position. And that way, when you turn on the camera, you can start shooting. I'm gonna make a different video, like I mentioned before, just to talk about this lens, because yes, it is a kit lens. Yes, you know, there are also a lot of sacrifices with this lens, but this lens is actually really sharp and it is really light and compact. And again, it goes with the meaning of this camera. Now, the focal length of 20 to 60 is completely awkward in my opinion, but I think that this is the compromise that Sony had to make in order to, you know, fit all this range in a small form factor. You know, ideally I would love this lens to be at least 20 millimeters to 50, and I would have been happier. But again, I don't know if optically that is possible and to achieve a lens this compact. All right, so let's talk about some of my favorite features right here all around the camera. We have these little nice doors right now that are a lot better than the other ones that were dangling all around. So this one right here is going to be the microphone port, and as you can see in the middle, we have the SD card. We only have one, but this one is UHS 2 card, so it's gonna be really fast. Once again, you know, we have to go with a one SD card method right here in order to save size. And this is why, you know, I'm mentioning that this camera is more similar than an A6600 than a Sony A7 III, which also has one UHS 2 SD card. Now, right at the bottom, we're gonna find the HDMI port, the headphone jack, and also a USB-C for charge and transferring files to the computer. Now, I really like this because it even has a switch and it really locks in place if you want them all closed. Now let's talk a little bit about the EVF, because now you're gonna find that this EVF is gonna do the job just fine. But remember, once again, this camera is a compact camera. Most people are gonna be using the screen. Now we don't have any type of eye cup on the EVF, so yes, you're gonna have some light leaking through your eye, through the side of your eye, but I guess you can just, you know, get used to that. And I'm assuming that someone is gonna come up with some sort of retrofit solution to actually snug in place here. Now, in terms of dial, like I mentioned before, right from factory default, this dial is set up to control the aperture. But you can actually go in the menus and configure this dial to control the shutter speed, which I think is going to be best. Now, a lot of cameras do the shutter speed like this, just like the Sony A6600 once again. And I guess you can swap the order of what this does. You know, maybe you can control the aperture with this one and use this one for the shutter speed. And I think that's gonna be kind of fun, because then the ISO, you just press on the side and you can control the ISO. Now, I've been shooting for all my travel photography almost exclusively with the Sony A6600. And let me tell you, I find this really fast just to do this and start scrolling and, you know, undo it. So I don't see any problem. So if you are considering this camera as the one camera for all your professional photography and videography, yes, you're gonna have some compromises when it comes to buttons and dial, but you still have the functionality to configure the experience to make it as fast as possible, you know, based on the limitations that we have with the camera. So in my opinion, that's not gonna be a problem. You know, this is not gonna stop me from taking great pictures. Now let's talk about some of the video features that we're gonna have here. And just like the Sony A7 III and the A6600, we have the XAVCS 4K codec, and then we have the HD. You know, pretty simple. We only have 2 codecs. Now, when it comes to frame rate, we're gonna have 120 frames per second down to 1 frames per second, which this is gonna give you kind of like a time lapse, you know, type of effect that you're gonna be able to review the movie internally right here on the camera. Now, let's talk a little bit about the grip, because this is where this camera caught me by surprise a little bit. I thought that the grip was gonna be a little bit deeper, and we still have that kind of gripping on the camera that it's just not a full grip, you know, like I call it. Now, the Sony A6600 actually feels a little bit better than this camera when it comes to gripping. But once again, it's a light camera, and obviously you can use much heavier lenses. You know, this camera is gonna perform best when it comes to ergonomics when used with smaller lenses. Now, when it comes to APS-C glass, this camera also is gonna have an APS-C mode that you're gonna be able to put your APS-C glass there. Now, but keep in mind that if you're gonna be shooting stills with APS-C glass, your resolution is gonna be 10 megapixels rather than 24, because it's gonna be using a small portion of this sensor. Now, for movies, that's not gonna be a problem because, you know, again, you're gonna shoot at 10 megapixels, but you only need 8.5 megapixel for 4K, so I don't think you're gonna notice any loss of quality there in your video. Now, one of the things that I like is that finally Sony departed from having the SD card right here on the battery compartment. I really appreciate it that they have located here. Now, this is gonna be really handy, especially if this camera is gonna sit on a tripod, and it's gonna allow you to extract your card, you know, back up your footage or photos and go back and pop a new card. Now, like I mentioned before, let me actually pop the Sigma glass right here, and I'm probably gonna be doing also a review of this lens very soon. But let me show you how it looks with a little bit bigger of a lens. Wow, one of the things that I like is that it's a little bit bigger than the 85 f1.8 version, yet it is an f1.4. Now, if you know, the f1.4 version of the Sony is huge and heavy and super slow. So, wow, this is gonna be my setup for portrait. I can already tell. Wow. This looks really, really nice, guys. Wow, it feels really, really good. So again, we're not gonna be talking much about this lens because I haven't tried it yet, but at a glance, I'm actually in love. Now, one of the things that's very apparent in this camera is that we don't have any joystick to control our autofocusing points and moving across the screen, but you can always use the D-pad, activate it, you press the center and you move them around, but you're gonna notice that it's not the fastest way of moving your focusing points. You can also use the back of the screen and tap, but once again, if you're shooting photography and you're looking through the EVF, probably you're gonna wanna have a joystick. So I think that that's one of the things that I miss the most in this camera is going to be the joystick. Let's talk a little bit about the things that I wish that Sony included in this camera. Number one, a front dial. You know, I think that this was a wasted opportunity. They could have made the grip a little bit deeper. The next thing is gonna be the joystick on the back of the camera. And I understand why they went with one SD card. You know, if they would have added another one, probably the camera would have to be a lot bigger, you know, but it would have been nice to have one. Probably what they could have done is have one here and maybe one in place of the battery, just like the Sony A6600 does it. I wish the camera had a bigger EVF, but once again, this camera is designed to be compact, so everything is gonna be miniaturized in this camera. When it comes to video specs, you know, this camera is gonna cap at 4K 30p, 8-bit 420. No 10-bit in here like it was rumored before, and no $1,000 price tag like it was also rumored before. But for the price and for what this camera is capable of, I think that a lot of people are gonna be more than happy with it. Right now, I'm shooting with the Sony A7 III and the A6400 right here. They are 8-bit 420, and to be honest with you, this is how I've been creating all my content. Another thing that you gotta keep in mind is that as you go in 10-bit, your file size is gonna be a lot bigger. So for a lot of people, that is not something that they wanna get into, you know, bigger file size, you know, heavier files to edit. So this one is gonna be a great option, guys. So remember, guys, you can win this camera by the end of the year by simply subscribing to this channel, enable notifications, and follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Gaston Shutters, because this one is going to one lucky winner, and that could be you guys. So this is gonna wrap it up for today, guys. I hope you had enjoyed this video. Ask me all the questions you want about this camera, and also if you want me to do any particular video, drop your comments or suggestions down below. Until then, see you on the next video. Take care.